One of the most dangerous things a child can have is a desire to mimic the actions of those they idolize, without understanding what it actually is that makes them idols in the first place. And what I mean by this is that if a child were to idolize, say, a gunslinger, and they were to see a shootout take place between their idol and a gang of drug dealers, if they were to then go on and mimic the actions of their idol, they wouldn't be mimicking their idol's reason for violence, rather they'd just be mimicking the violence itself. Essentially saying that a child doesn't understand what they don't see. If Kenard is told that Omar is a legend, yet only ever sees him rob and kill, he's going to assume that it's the violence which makes him a legend. Which is actually how Kenard is introduced. He's shown reenacting the violence he saw his idol commit, however without any backstory or reason for getting into the shootout. He's simply just mimicking senseless violence.
Yo, I'm trying to be Omar. No!
Let me ask you all a question. Why do you think we never got to see a scene with Kenard in school? And why do you think he was never a part of Bunny Colvin's socialisation experiment? Was it what he claimed? That being he's too tough to go? Or was it because he simply couldn't be taught? You see, each of the season 4 boys all became the individuals they wound up becoming in season 5, mostly because of what they were surrounded by. It wasn't so much nature than it was nurture. However, Kenard always came across as a character who was going to act the way he did, regardless of who or what he was surrounded by. Essentially saying that the streets isn't the reason behind Kenard being the troubled child that he is. Rather, it's what's inside that causes Kenard to act the way he acts. And studies have made it clear that such behaviour is nearly impossible to treat. If you take a sociopath to therapy, all they're going to learn is how to better hide their evil ways so to get back out onto the streets. And so if you were to try and socialise a child like Kenard, all you will be doing is bettering his abilities as a criminal. You'll teach him to hide the one thing that makes him stand out, his stupidity. And that's assuming Kenard would even entertain the idea of being taught. As Bunny Colvin demonstrates to us in season 4, some children are simply beyond saving.
Look, I'm ready to acknowledge that 18 to 21 might be too seasoned.
Kenard is one of a few characters on the show who seem as though they're just an inherently evil person, so psychologically damaged that even at the age of 10 he could be deemed too far gone. However, in order for us to truly understand a character like Kenard, we need to understand the why to all his actions. You see, Kenard is somewhat motivated by Omar Little, and he even states in his introduction that it's his turn to be Omar, suggesting that perhaps becoming Omar is one of his goals. And so, as most children do, he mends his personality in an attempt to copy that of his idols, which is part of the reason why he robs Naaman's stash, only to be caught no more than a day later. And this is another part of that danger I spoke of earlier, as Kenard attempts to replicate the actions of Omar, yet hasn't the slightest clue as to what he's doing. He robs his own boss's stash, makes no attempt to cover his tracks, and winds up getting beaten for it. He's lucky Naaman didn't think to tell anybody other than Michael, as if he did, Kenard would have almost definitely gotten himself killed.
Where the package at, man?
Package up my ass, Gump.
Yo, I'm out the...
You're about to. Go on walk, gump-ass motherfucker.
Now, when I mentioned just a moment ago that Kenard mended his personality in an attempt to resemble that of Omar's, it wasn't so much the real Omar who he mended it around. Rather, it was Kenard's own depiction of Omar that he was trying to resemble. And this is why he's so disappointed when he finally gets to meet Omar in real life. as what Kenard had more than likely imagined was somebody similar to that of the way he himself was acting. However, when a child sees you as weak, it doesn't matter what or who you did in the past, as all they see is what's in front of them. And so if you look weak to somebody like Kenard, that's all you are. Many Wire fans love to speculate over why Kenard killed Omar. However, the answer I thought was fairly obvious, albeit a mixture of things. You see, Bunk chastises Omar on his views when it comes to killing, as Omar's under the impression that so long as he doesn't kill anybody outside of the game, then he isn't really harming anybody who matters, especially in the eyes of the police. However, just because one kills those who he believes worsen a community, doesn't actually benefit that community. Rather, it just breeds new problems. As mentioned early on, a child like Kenard may witness what you're doing, and like everybody else start to glorify you in your violence. One day he may notice you to be weak, however, and finds himself shooting you in a store, all because he both wants what made him so fond of you, glory and reputation, and the fact that to some extent you betrayed him by not living up to the legend he assumed you to be. The more important question this video should be asking, however, is not why did Kenard kill Omar, but how at the age of 10 did he have the stomach to do it? And the answer to this question is curiosity. You see, before Kenard shoots Omar, he can be seen attempting to set fire to a stray cat, which is a rather common thing for children you may deem as psychotic to do, as they're simply curious to see what would happen. And when Kenard sees Omar pass, an even larger injured animal, that curiosity only spikes, and he isn't thinking about the potential consequences of his actions, or how Omar may turn the gun on him if he were to be caught. He's simply just wanting to appease that curiosity.
Who got him?
Some young boy.
Who?
Ain't heard the name, don't even know if there was a why. Hop on one of hip hop, see the damage, you know? Yeah.
Kenard reacts to his first ever murder, as I imagine any child would, sane or otherwise. He's stunned at how it all played out, and also shocked that Omar had actually been killed. A feat he probably didn't even think possible by anybody, let alone a kid. The aftermath of the murder wounds up with Kenard getting arrested, but not receiving any credit, and definitely not any of the 250 grand promised by Marlowe for the murder, which I would imagine Kenard tried to make clear, telling anybody who'll listen that he was the one who killed the great Omar. However, people just aren't able to reconcile themselves with the belief that it was a kid who killed the legendary Omar, and so dozens of stories are created, with Kenard's more than likely finding itself at the bottom of the pile. The government also definitely wouldn't want a story about a child murder in cold blood known to the public, and I would imagine Marlowe out of embarrassment wouldn't either. Kenard reminds me a lot of Marquise Hilton, also known as Bird, whose name in French actually means duck, also a type of bird, and I would imagine Kenard's life upon release from jail to somewhat resemble that of Bird's. He's a psychopath who isn't going to receive any credit for the murder of Omar, isn't smart enough to run his own operation, and will more than likely find him and his violent tendencies being exploited by somebody with a brain. It truly is both a shame and a win that a child like Kenard was born in Baltimore, as the institutions aren't nowhere near equipped enough to be able to provide him with the help he so desperately needs. Yet he does find himself in a city where there's an obvious career path for somebody with his skill set.
Where you going?
We're in the alleys. We get back in there, we can hunt him up.
No need. No
Let
more.
me go, motherfucker.
What about this one?
He isn't even bait. We toss him back. Unless you want to spend half the shift down at baby booking. Me?
I ain't